One of the most powerful compositions in all of Overwatch is the Brawl composition, but a lot of people don't know exactly how to play it, nor do they understand what characters go inside the comp. So we're going to break down everything you need to know about what a Brawl is, how to play it, how to dominate with it, and how to win some freaking games. But do me a huge solid and smash that subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and let me know what video you want to see next, and let's jump right into it. Now, the first thing that you might be wondering is, what is a Brawl? Now, a Brawl is a close-range composition that wants to stay together, fight as a unit, and has high amounts of sustain, meaning that they can trade active amounts of blows because they have high health pools, huge amounts of healing, and the ability to take a huge amount of punishment and not die or no one die and dish out a crazy amount of damage. Now, we'll break down this concept a little bit more in a bit, but let's talk about what characters make up a Brawl composition. From the tanking category, there's quite a few of them. Ryan and Junker Queen are the most obvious Brawl candidates, characters that literally want to get really close to the target or actually on top of them to do the most damage, swing on the target, and they just want to fight close, like right on top of whoever they're fighting. And there are other tanks that kind of fit in this as well, although a little bit different. Characters like Zarya and Orisa also can brawl, even though Orisa can poke from range. She does have a brawl aspect to her, and Ramattra is a little bit of a hybrid tank that can brawl sometimes. You could definitely play it in a more flexible composition and have the means to pivot into a brawl. But let's talk about the supports that build up a Brawl composition, and really the most important one is Lucio. And Lucio is really important because speed boost is exactly what you want out of a Brawl composition, because getting in your effective range, which is really up close, is the most important thing. And that can be pretty difficult without speed boost getting your entire team in. Now, that being said, characters like Junker Queen does have that shout, and you can still set up a close range engagement without Lucio, but the better and better teams you go up against, the better and better Lucio's speed becomes. And yeah, he's probably the cornerstone of the majority of Brawls. But as far as whatever second support you play, I think a lot of them could work. Specifically, Moira, Bap, and Brig are all decent, although Brig is strange because Brig and Lucio together doesn't really create enough healing output to sustain a Brawl. So even though Brig is a good brawler, you would probably have to play her with something that's not Lucio, and sacrificing that speed boost is a big deal. But if you have like maybe Junker Queen's shout or something along those lines, it could be okay. I think it could be fine. Now, you could technically still play supports like Kiriko and Ana in the Brawl as well, although these characters definitely benefit from separating themselves from the team, so not quite as good as some of the other options, but I think you could definitely make it work because these characters have really powerful utility that can help inside the Brawl. So like Suzu and Rush and freaking Nano and Nade, all these are amazing. Next up, we got to talk about DPS, and basically any DPS that wants to fight from mid-ish to close range. So like Reaper, Mei, Cassidy, Torb, Sim, all these characters are really good in a Brawl. They want to stack with their team, they want to fight together, and they typically get a huge amount of benefit by staying alive throughout the fight. So like Mei with the wall gets to get some additional value, walling off a potential kill in the middle of the fight, and then the Brawl, the entire glob of people can go on whoever's walled off. Cassidy just outputs a crazy amount of damage, probably the easiest inclusion in any Brawl composition right now. Also makes you a lot better up against many of the like fly compositions like Pharah, Mercy. We got Torb with high health totals and the ability to just be that freaking like consistent form of damage inside of a Brawl, and then Sim in the Brawl mirrors and just in some slow attrition fights with the Brawl. Sim is going to build up like a crazy amount of charge, and teleporting your freaking giant blob of Brawl around is actually really strong. Now, you don't necessarily have to have every single DPS perfectly fitting into the Brawl, but some combination of those 5 characters is best, or at least one of them if you want to build yourself a Brawl composition. Now, the next part is going to talk about how we play this comp and how we win with this comp, because it's so powerful if played correctly, but a lot of people mess up these core concepts. The first thing, like we said, you got to get in the effective range. There's a lot of compositions that want to fight from distance. It could be a sniper composition. It could be a Sigma composition, poking from a distance. It could even be a dive composition. But regardless, you want to set up in and get in your effective range. Now, a dive composition is going to take the fight to you, and oftentimes you're going to want to stack together, not split too far. Don't leave any piece vulnerable so that you're there to have that quote-unquote sustain and withstand the engagement by the enemy. But as far as, like, let's say a double sniper sigma composition, a Brawl will do something that a lot of compositions will not do. They will literally engage characters that you would think are not characters you would normally fight. So, like, as an example, let's say it's double sniper sigma. A Brawl composition could speed onto the sigma and just beat the hell out of this tank. And you're like, what the heck? I thought we're supposed to fight DPS or, you know, go find picks on supports before we even fight the tank. But with all of you focusing the same target, speeding onto the sigma, fighting right on top of him, which is not his effective range, that's not really where he wants to play, you can kill him out of nowhere. And, you know, you can do this on a Brawl where you basically force the fight on targets that can't get away. And because you have so much damage, so much grouping, and you're working as like this one like moving death ball, you can just kill people out of nowhere. It doesn't really matter how much health they have. You can just freaking delete them. Now, on top of that, as a Brawl, you need to be rotating together and not splitting up too far. While your DPS can definitely take slight alternate angles, like the cast could be slightly away from you, engaging at the same time as your Brawl tank, but not necessarily right on top of your Brawl tank. You don't want to be like within a roll and a couple steps away from your team. Everyone wants to be very, very close together, because the idea is if you're all together and you're all outputting consistent damage on the same targets, you basically just get to gobble up and destroy whatever the group pushes on or whatever your tank pushes on, who is the primary person that you should follow. And a Brawl really falls apart where people start focusing on different things or the comp starts to split up, because the strength of the comp is greater than the sum of its parts. That's the best way to describe it. Similar when we just talked about the dive composition, with a Brawl, instead of jumping on top of a team with mobility, you are basically speeding on or walking onto a team outside of their comfort zone and just trading large amounts of damage, large amounts of focus fire, really powerful cooldowns to overwhelm and destroy the enemy. Now, another thing that you need to understand is that every single Brawl is going to center around your tank. It's always going to center around your tank. If you're a support, your primary objective is to enable your tank in order to get in and get in safely and get in fast. So like speeding them in, healing them up, allowing them to be this brute force aggro taking machine. Like think about a Ron that's being sped in, given a heal orb by Moira, and allowed to go ham on the front line. Now, DPS don't necessarily need to be right on top of that Rhine, even though they could, depending on the DPS they are. But the idea is that the Rhine, or whatever of your Brawl tank is going in, is creating so much pressure that DPS have a very easy time confirming kills. Basically, the Brawl elicits such a strong response from the enemy that they can't really afford to worry about anything else, or else the Rhine will overwhelm them. So it's going to cause a ton of responses with cooldowns. A Sigma will freaking use his rock, his grasp. Honest will start throwing nades and sleep darts. Freaking, the team will start going nuts trying to stop the initiation of the Brawl, and that opportunity is where the DPS go in, utilize the pressure that their tank is creating and their supports are creating, and basically clean up the fight or create opportunity. The second the enemy team starts losing people, the Brawl still groups up together, remains strong, remains like a freaking ship, a fighting force, a death ball, a blob, and then you can just go from one group to the next, constantly like gobbling up people in your freaking ball of death, and yeah, you win the fight that way. Now, because of the strength of the group in a Brawl composition, you can stagger teams more aggressively than you can do with just about any other comp. So, like, if the enemy teams are grouping up with 3, sometimes even 4 people, you will literally just force an engagement onto them. It's like, hey, oh, they don't have a vital person. Like, let's say all of them die, but maybe their Ana's delayed or their tank's delayed. You just force a fight with them. You're like, all right, we're going to go on them. We're going to stagger. We're going to kill. We're going to wipe. And the idea is you never allow them to fully regroup, and you keep setting the fight on your team's terms. That's the core idea. And of course, this is going to require a decent amount of communication. But even if you're playing in ranked, a Brawl can work as long as you just follow whatever your tank is doing. If your tank is aggressive, you're aggressive. If your tank is passive, you're passive. And oftentimes, you're going to be able to completely snowball games and just win fight after fight after fight for free because you're playing together. You're always focusing the same target. But this also leads me to the next thing that you need to think about when playing a Brawl, and it's using your ults aggressively or to create that momentum. So when you're trading large amounts of damage, heals, resources, oftentimes it's a race to build up that ultimate. Like, especially if it's like a Brawl mirror, 2 Ryans swinging at each other, 2 Drunken Queens swinging at each other. Everyone's trading resources like crazy. Everyone's trading damage like crazy. Everyone's trading heals like crazy. You want to find an opportunity to break that stalemate. And oftentimes it's first person to ult. So like, if you're in a Brawl where your team isn't lost anybody, the enemy team hasn't lost anyone at the start of the game, if you're a support, because you're healing so much, oftentimes you'll just get your ultimate incredibly quickly. And you just want to use it. It doesn't even have to be perfect. It's just about the momentum. It's about breaking open that stagger and just using that initial ult to snowball and win the fight. And everyone else on your team builds an ult advantage as well. And then you just chain ult after ult after ult to every single fight. And you're not allowing the enemy team to ult you and then you ult them back. No, it's like the enemy team is regrouping, or the enemy team is starting to regroup or almost regrouped. You speed in, you take the fight to them, the tank goes in really, really aggressively, you pop your ultimate, you never let them get their legs back from under them. And it's an incredibly powerful strategy. And the thing is, you inadvertently play a lot of freaking Brawl compositions and don't even realize it because you're just following your Rhine into battle. In fact, a Brawl with a Rhine is one of the most common compositions that people play. Even though there's things they're doing right and wrong within the composition, you have played it a shit ton in Ranked. Now, last up, let's talk about when and where a Brawl comp is good and where it's bad. So, maps with a lot of high ground can be pretty difficult for a Brawl. So, like, as an example, New Bonnie first. Playing Brawl can be difficult because if the enemy team are all set up on the high ground, you go low, the enemy team get to play slow, look for an opportunity to get a pick, and then come fight you. Or if you're going up high, then you're a Brawl, you're pretty close range. So, it can be pretty difficult for you to get into the range of the enemy. Now, there's ways to play around this, and the first way is with tricky routing. And I think that if you route, like let's say you route up, you route around, you clear the high ground, you wrap all the way to the right through stairs, like you could do all kinds of stuff like that. But the more and more you play a Brawl composition in a map that is untraditional, I think it requires more communication, so it's a lot harder to perform in Ranked. Now, if you have some amounts of DPS, so let's say you have like maybe a Sim with a Sim wall, or a Mei with a Mei wall, or something like that, you can go and bring the fight to point using an ultimate or using an ability to put additional pressure on the enemy team, preventing them from getting a pick off or delaying, and applying pressure to the point, the capture point. And the second the enemy comes and drops down, any enemy, doesn't matter what it is, your Lucio speeds, you collapse on that person, you gobble them up like you're fucking Pac-Man, and you get a pick in the fight. And that's how you force the Brawl. And then there's more pressure on the point for them to go, but they're down in numbers. So that's kind of the idea. You're forcing the enemy to either fight on your terms, or you're bringing the fight to them. Some of that takes a little bit more communication than others. But this is the Brawl Comp Masterclass. If you have any questions about how to play Brawl, definitely let me know down below. And let me know what composition guide you want to see next. Do me a huge solid and smash the like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.